He thought he was giving an orphan a new life, but what he discovered later would connect him to a woman he owed everything to. Aarav Mehta had everything: businesses, a sea-facing mansion, a spotless public image. But his heart carried one quiet emptiness. He never had a family of his own. He had grown up in a broken household, raised more by the housemaid than his actual parents. Her name was Kamla Bai, a kind, sturdy woman who tucked him in at night and told him stories while his parents traveled the world. She disappeared from his life when he was just 12, leaving behind only memories of warmth in an otherwise cold home. Years passed, wealth came, accolades followed, but something still felt missing. One rainy afternoon, while visiting a local charity gala, Aarav was introduced to a shy little boy named Ishan, 6 years old, with messy hair, bruised knees, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much silence. He was told the child had no known relatives, found abandoned, withdrawn, barely spoke. But when Aarav bent down and gently asked his name, the boy simply said, "Ishan." Then, for the first time in days, he smiled. That smile struck something deep in Aarav. Within weeks, the adoption papers were signed. Aarav gave Ishan everything: a warm bed, good food, a tutor, and endless bedtime stories. Slowly the boy opened up, laughed, played, called him Papa. And for the first time in his adult life, Aarav felt whole. What he didn't know was that fate was about to repay a debt he didn't even realize he owed. It had been almost 6 months since Ishan came home, and every day Aarav saw more of himself in the boy, not in features, but in spirit. Quiet strength, curiosity, a hunger for love that had long been denied. One evening, while helping Ishan with his drawing project, Aarav handed him an old wooden box filled with his childhood keepsakes: paper clips, marbles, faded birthday cards. Ishan loved playing with it, sorting through the trinkets as if they were buried treasure. And then he pulled out a photograph. "Who's this, Papa?" Ishan asked, holding it up. Aarav took the picture and froze. It was a black and white photo of him as a child, no more than 7, sitting on a kitchen counter, grinning wide. Beside him stood an older woman in a simple sari, hair braided back, hands flour-covered, laughing as she stirred something in a pot. Kamla Bai. Aarav smiled softly. "That's the woman who raised me," he said. "She worked in our house, but to me she was everything." Ishan stared at the photo. His face slowly changed. "I've seen her before," he said quietly. Aarav blinked. "Where?" Ishan ran to his room and returned with a worn piece of paper, a folded drawing of a woman with a braid, a kind smile, and a sari. "She was in my dreams. I called her Dadi." The world around Aarav seemed to blur. "How do you know that word?" he asked, his voice shaking. Ishan looked confused. "I just remember her. She used to hum lullabies. She used to say, 'Beta, one day someone will love you the way you deserve.'" Aarav's heart pounded. "Did anyone ever tell you her name?" Ishan nodded slowly. "Her name was Kamla." The photo slipped from Aarav's fingers. Could it be? Was this boy, the child he had taken in as a stranger, the grandson of the very woman who once saved him from loneliness? It wasn't just an adoption. It was a reunion. The next morning, Aarav couldn't shake the feeling from his chest, a strange pull between disbelief and destiny. He made calls to the orphanage, digging through records, asking questions he never thought he'd ask. A few threads unraveled quickly. Ishan had been brought in by a woman from a village 2 hours away, just months before Aarav met him. The woman had mentioned his parents were gone, and that the boy had been raised by his grandmother for a few years, until she passed. Her name? Kamla Bai. Aarav drove to that village the very next day, Ishan sleeping peacefully in the back seat. When they arrived, he walked into a humble tea stall and showed the photo from his childhood. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up. "That's Kamla Bai," he said. "She used to work in the city. Came back here a few years ago with a small boy. Said he was her grandson. Never told anyone what happened to his parents. She worked odd jobs, kept to herself. Sweetest soul you'd ever meet." Aarav's throat tightened. "Where is she now?" The man lowered his voice. "She passed last year. Fever. No money for a doctor. No one to help. She left the boy with a neighbor. That's when the orphanage took him." Aarav stood there in stunned silence. She had saved him when he had no one. And in her final years, she had been alone, raising a child, protecting him, never asking for help. But somehow, she had sent Ishan right back to him. That night, Aarav held Ishan close, staring at the stars from their balcony. "Your Dadi," he whispered, "was the reason I ever made it in life. She gave me love when I didn't even know I needed it. And now, I get to do the same for you." Ishan curled into him, half asleep. "She said you'd come." And for the first time in years, Aarav cried. Not out of grief, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of full-circle grace. Weeks passed, and something in Aarav shifted, not in his status or business, but in his soul. Every corner of his mansion that once felt hollow now echoed with Ishan's laughter. Bedtime stories replaced business calls. Pancake Sundays replaced board meetings. And in the center of it all was Kamla Bai's spirit, felt in every warm moment between father and son. But Aarav wasn't content just letting her memory fade into photographs. He made a decision. One morning, newspapers across the city carried the headline, "Millionaire builds home for forgotten caregivers, dedicated to the woman who raised him." The foundation was named Kamla's Nest, a shelter for retired maids, caretakers, and workers who spent their lives raising others' children but were forgotten in the end. Free housing, medical care, dignity, everything Kamla Bai was denied in her final years. At the opening ceremony, Aarav stood with Ishan beside a giant portrait of Kamla Bai, smiling in her simple sari. The same photo from his childhood, now framed in gold. "I stand here today not because I built an empire," Aarav said to the crowd, "but because a woman named Kamla Bai taught me love when I had none. And now, her grandson will grow up with everything she dreamed of, and more." The crowd rose in applause. Ishan held Aarav's hand tightly and looked up at the portrait. "She's proud of us, Papa. I know it." Aarav knelt beside him. "And I'm proud of her, and of you, always." 1 year later, Ishan placed first in his school's art contest. His painting? A small child holding hands with an old woman beneath a banyan tree and a tall man behind them smiling. The caption? "Family isn't who you're born to. It's who finds you when you need love the most." And in that moment, everyone watching understood. This wasn't just a story about adoption. It was about destiny, debt repaid, and a bond that began in the quiet corners of a servant's kitchen and bloomed into a legacy the world would never forget.